didn't want to cheat during my marriage, so I had a wild trio just before our wedding, but then I had a threesome before my marriage just so I would never cheat on my fiance after we got married. But all my plans backfired and my fiance found out the truth and ruined my life. It really hurts me that this had to happen to me when all I really wanted was to avoid him finding out. I just wanted to safeguard our marriage by having all the wild fun before I finally had to commit. I really need you all to tell me where I went wrong. I, F29, am an accountant while my fiance, Anthony, M31, is also an accountant. We don't work at the same place though. We just met through mutual friends. Surprisingly, Anthony and I just dated for 2.5 years before we decided to tie the knot. He proposed on my 29th birthday and I said yes. But the thing is, I never doubted my desire to get married to Anthony. I just doubted if I was ready for it or not. The time was what I had a problem with. Deep down, I just knew I had this debt of commitment. Don't get it twisted, please. I never cheated on Anthony all through our dating years. I was 100% committed to him. But it's common knowledge that the thought of marriage makes some people nervous. It's a universal thinking that once you're married, your legs have to be closed to other men forever. It was this particular thought that really brought up my nerves. I just couldn't imagine a life like that. I knew deep down that if I said no to getting married to Anthony immediately, there would be several women that were ready to steal him. And just like I stated earlier, I wanted to be with Anthony, but I just wasn't ready for that marriage part because it freaked me out a lot. You might want to ask, so why didn't you tell him about it? Hell no. Never in a million years would I have said what I really felt. He's 31 years old, for crying out loud. He's well-to-do and he has a stable job. I know many of his colleagues that don't hide their interest in him. I knew deep down that saying no would be foolish. So I said yes and decided to do things my way, and kind you my way was just too immoral and sinful. But what could I do? I was scared of commitment and I thought I found the easy way out. Consequently, when it was exactly 2 weeks to our wedding, I got the worst cold feet ever. My mind was in a million places, and my thoughts kept drifting to life after marriage and the possibilities of being caged in the routine of a married woman. I hated those thoughts with everything in me, but I didn't try to suppress it either. I knew that if I couldn't fix things at that moment, it would be harder to fix it in the marriage. So I decided to seek the advice of an anonymous group on the internet. I had been a member of that group for over 5 years. The group mainly consisted of people asking for advice just like Reddit. They also do it anonymously, but the only difference is that there, people are advised to do crazy stuff, live life freely, and do that bad thing just once. I joined the group solely for entertainment, and I never imagined that I'd seek advice there one day. So I decided to be a daredevil and table my issues there. In less than 24 hours, I got many replies on what to do. There were a lot of crazy ideas, but the idea that really stood out for me was that of getting a threesome before I tied the knot. At first I laughed at the thought, but when I noticed that almost a dozen people stated the same thing, I naturally started to imagine the thought of it. Of course, there were other ideas there that routinely made sense, but I was more drawn to the idea of having a crazy night before marriage. I would like to think that this particular idea stood out to me because I knew it would quench my taste in some way. I felt like it would kill two birds with one stone. First of all, I would have a crazy night to fantasize about any time I get bored in my marriage, and second of all, it wouldn't seem like I was missing out on anything because I would remind myself that I've done that crazy thing before. Perfect plan. It was literally the perfect plan for me. I was so excited that I thanked the other members and asked them to wish me good luck. Before the engagement, and even down to before getting married, Anthony and I never lived under the same roof. What I'm trying to say is that I never moved into his house. I did sleep over most times, but I never slept over more than 2 nights. So there was no way I would have gotten caught, and I know this because I analyzed everything ahead of time. I had my own apartment and Anthony had his own house. I didn't like the thought of that before, but when I decided to have a threesome, I was grateful that we had different homes. Now you might want to ask, where the hell did you get the men from? The group also assisted me with a site. It wasn't specifically like a dating site, it was more like a sure for who *ups. I got on the site, and after 3 days of scrolling through, I set a date to meet with the guys. I think I'll just call them my APs. So exactly 1 week before my wedding, I decided to meet up with them at a hotel. Apart from the anonymous group, no one else knew about my plans. Anthony had no clue what I planned to do. In fact, he was so busy with balancing work and our wedding preparations that there was no way he would even think I wanted to cheat. But to be honest, in my mind, I didn't really consider what I planned to do as cheating. Did I? It was just a harmless one last night of fun. So I bet you with the guys at the hotel and we did it. Yes, I didn't back down, and I shamelessly had the threesome with 3 total strangers. Yes, I used protection, and no, I never knew them before. It was just a platonic night. I didn't exchange numbers with them, though they did try to get my phone number. Up until that moment, we only communicated online. Not on WhatsApp, just on the site. I did that because I didn't want any complications. I've heard of so many stories of how nights like that ended up. The guys would get attached and would try to cause a scene, or the bride would foolishly cancel her wedding. There was no way in hell I planned on letting my marriage scatter because of 2 strangers I met online. But despite my desperate attempts to keep my marriage safe and okay, nothing worked. I mean, absolutely nothing worked, and all of my efforts actually backfired. Consequently, I did get my mind off the possibilities of being confined and bored in my marriage, but nothing got better for me. In fact, it felt like I unleashed problems in my life. I had to start fighting so hard to keep Anthony from finding out the truth. I also had to try my best to look innocent and act like nothing actually happened. It was definitely difficult, and trust me, nothing worked. I did tell you guys that many of Anthony's colleagues made their interest in him known, right? Well, guess what? I wasn't wrong. Those women are like ticks in my flesh. Anthony always tells me to ignore them, but I can't seem to do so. They were invited to the wedding even though I tried my best not to invite them. The thing is, Anthony invited all his colleagues to the wedding. I did too, but I couldn't help the thought of seeing those women. He has male colleagues too, but none of them give me the ick like the female ones. I'm stressing on them because they played a huge role in Anthony finding out the truth. Even though I had a hand in it, I swear that Jay was doing a great job of hiding if not for his stuck-up colleagues. So about 5 days to our wedding, we had a lot of events planned out. We booked a hotel for the full 5 days and the celebration started, literally. When I say celebration, I don't really mean extravagant things. Some were just simple dinners and games. Anthony and I were not stupid enough to spend a fortune on the wedding and end up broke after. So that's why we were smart enough to keep things modest and affordable. Unfortunately, Anthony and I had a big fight on the first night at the hotel. The thing is, the guys I had the threesome with kept on messaging me on the site repeatedly, even after I had warned them to stay away from me. So when I got a message from them again after trying to get rid of them over and over, I got pissed and left the room to go send them a voice note. Let me clear this up. Before I stormed out of the room, Anthony and I had been busy having a conversation. He had been stressed about a lot of things and wanted to speak to me about it. I was stressed too, and to be honest, I wasn't even listening to him. I just pretended to listen even though I was checking my phone every minute and typing replies. Anthony noticed this, unfortunately, and bounced out his anger immediately. He asked why I was multitasking and couldn't just drop the phone and listen to him. I tried to gaslight him by saying that I was stressed thinking about our wedding. I also blamed him for being stressed and accused him of inviting his female colleagues when he was fully aware that I didn't like them. Well, I know I was very wrong for doing that, but that was just me trying not to be in a bad position. I didn't want to get caught, and I did everything in my power not to raise any suspicions. I ended up apologizing to Anthony and promising to listen to him. I tried to do so for about 5 minutes before I got another frustrating text from the 2 guys. I just couldn't hold it any longer, so I got up and stormed out of the room with no date for what Anthony would think. In fact, at that moment, I forgot he was even in the room. You guys might try to judge me, but you cannot imagine how hard it is. Do you know how hard it is to hide something that big? I had a threesome without my finances knowledge, a threesome without him and without his consent. I just went on to do whatever I wanted. Of course, I was scared of the outcome and what he would think. I didn't even want to imagine what he was going to do to me or how he was going to cancel our wedding. I was beyond embarrassed, so I just got into my kind and forgot about everything that was going on around me. Anthony didn't take this lightly, guys. In fact, he was extremely angry. Do you know that I ended up ruining things for myself? I had no idea who was behind me or if anyone even listened to me when I angrily recorded those long voice notes and warning messages. I had no idea that Anthony followed me out, so I just kept on speaking without a line of thought. When I was done, I got the shock of my life. What do you think happened? Of course, my bad luck came for me again. Anthony was behind me and he heard everything I said. I swear that my soul left my body at that moment. I just couldn't believe that I had let my guard down in such a way. It really came as a shock to me. I won't lie. You would expect Anthony to get angry and cancel the wedding immediately, right? Well, that didn't happen. I didn't expect that he would just stand there and look at me. I thought he would start shouting, kicking, and just doing several things. But no, Anthony just turned back and left. I wasn't happy because I definitely knew that silence on such a situation was never a good idea. I did the best thing I could do, which was to run after him. Luckily, or rather unluckily for me, I didn't beg or say anything about the voice note. I just asked him why he followed me out. To my surprise, all Anthony did was scold me for leaving him in the room like that when he was pouring out his heart to me. He accused me of not being supportive and for being extremely nonchalant about our wedding. Let me just say that I had never been more relieved in my life like Jay was in that moment. I was excited, happy, and surprised at the same time. I could not believe that Anthony didn't hear what I said. I don't know if I was just being foolish or if I was just having on to the little hope I had. I guess you could say I was just trying to hide from the truth. I consoled myself by thinking that he must have not really heard anything and might have come at the end. I told myself that there was every possibility that he actually heard something, but couldn't understand what I was talking about. Another thing that gave me hope was his silence. I loved the fact that he was silent all through and didn't try to bring up any conversation. We slept that night without having any complete talks, and I was really relieved and happy about that. It just felt like I had won, and that I had nothing to worry about. I was also happy that I finally got to shut the guys up and warn them to stay far away from me. I just couldn't help but feel extremely happy. But what I didn't know was that I was being the biggest fool ever. Because by thinking that all was well, I let my guard down, and that's eventually how I got caught. I was so free the next day that one would think I just won the lottery. Yes, you're free to laugh at my stupidity because it's definitely not naivety. Nothing about what I did was naive, and the fact that I tried to gaslight Anthony instead of coming clean just shows how aware I was. I'm not the first to be so stupid, but I guess I'm the first to get caught and punished in the most embarrassing way. But Anthony still has some of Blake on his shoulders, though. You all needed to see how nonchalant he was. Jay didn't even act like someone who was aware his wife had a threesome. He went about life like he usually did and acted like he normally did with me. I, on the other hand, suddenly became present and interested in our marriage. From left to right, I was trying my best to act normal. I acted normal to the extent that I forgot all about what I did. And that was literally one of the biggest mistakes I made. Do you know that while I was just being nonchalant and acting like the most loyal wife, Anthony had been plotting his revenge behind my back? Do you know that while I was acting like a fool and making a fool of myself, Anthony was going around with his female colleagues and trying to find out if I really cheated? Now that I think about it, I feel like burying myself under the ground. You know that feeling of wanting the ground to open so you can enter? That's exactly how I feel. It's that feeling of shame and embarrassment and just knowing that you were just too stupid. I was parading myself around all the events as the bride-to-be, but behind me, I was being duped big time. First of all, Anthony and I already made an arrangement that he would cover 70% of the wedding expenses and I would cover 30%. I was supposed to pay for the first two events while he covered everything else. But then Anthony suddenly met up with me and asked me to use my card for the rest of the wedding events. According to him, he was having issues with his card, and he was also expecting a huge amount of money. He promised to return my money and even had interest in it. Of course, I said yes. First of all, I didn't doubt him because I knew Anthony's financial capabilities were nothing to play with. I knew he was financially capable to pay me back, and also as an accountant, I couldn't say no to the opportunity to get extra interest when being compensated. I didn't think he had any ulterior motives, and I foolishly gave my card and watched as all expenses were deducted from it. Unknown to me that it was Anthony's first move of revenge. If I had known, I would have never given that card to him. He basically ripped me up and made me pay for the whole wedding. I used my card to pay for everything. He did that on purpose. Let me just say this now. Even though I was definitely wrong in some ways, he played dirty by doing what he did, and I actually expected more from him. I am beyond hurt and ashamed right now. I have my faults, but him stopping that low is just worse. To think that I didn't find out about everything until the very end is even worse. You know how I spoke about his female colleagues being in on it? Well, this is why I said so. Apparently, after Anthony caught me that night recording those voice notes, he was confused about some details, like the name of the site and some words I used. One of his colleagues saw him eavesdropping and decided to meet him the next day. She also heard me that night, but decided to leave everything till the next day. She met up with him and affirmed that I was indeed cheating. She also told Anthony about the site and told him it was a popular site that people used to do all sorts of bad things. Anthony then decided to check my phone so that he could confirm and see things for himself. You guys remember when I said I let my guard down because I thought no one was going to catch me? Well, that ended up biting me in the back. I thought I was being so smart that there was absolutely no way I was going to get caught. It happened that I left my phone unattended one day and went to take a shower. Anthony then got into my phone and went through it. Don't ask how he did it because it's simple. He knows my password and I know his too. I just got comfortable because he had never tried to check my phone before. I never checked his phone out of nowhere either. We just had that kind of mutual trust for each other. So he checked my phone and saw everything because I didn't delete it and I left it all there. I know all these because he told me all these on text after he ruined my life. Instead of Anthony coming clean and telling me he caught me already, he just decided to plan his revenge. On the final day of our wedding, when we were supposed to finally tie the knot, I got embarrassed big time. The day I expected to be the best day of my life turned out to be the absolute worst day of my life. I got embarrassed. I'm from dozens of people and I became a laughingstock. Just like every bride does, I got ready and filled up. I've heard of husbands being stood up at weddings, but I've definitely not heard of brides being stood up. I waited behind the doors for nearly 30 minutes, but no one signaled me to come in. I got tired of waiting and so did my father. He was the one supposed to walk in with me. I got fed up and decided to walk in to see why there was a delay. When I peeped, I saw no one waiting at the altar. Only the priest was there. Anthony was nowhere to be found. It made no sense because he already messaged her that morning with the message, "I'm waiting already." I decided to call him but discovered that he blocked my number. Can you imagine the confusion? My fiancé to be blocked me on our wedding day. I tried to look for his friends but they were all gone, even his colleagues. Only my side was left at the wedding. One by one, everyone got fed up and left. Anthony left me on our wedding day after dumping me. I was ashamed, embarrassed, and depressed. My family was embarrassed and disappointed because they just couldn't understand what suddenly happened. I cried myself to sleep that day because I was extremely angry. What's worse is the fact that I couldn't reach him. Exactly 2 weeks after I got embarrassed, Anthony unblocked me and sent me a lengthy message telling me how he found out about everything I did. He revealed everything to me and also told me I was his biggest mistake. He blocked me immediately after sending the message. I never even got my closure at the end of the day. Update. Like I said on the last update, I never got my closure. He just left me after dumping me. I basically paid for a wedding that never even happened. I spent all my money on something that ended up holding little to no value. Till this day, I'm still greatly embarrassed by the outcome of that day. I'm still frightened of public gatherings because Anthony basically ruined my life. Do you know how many people recognize me as the woman who got up on her wedding day? Going to work is torture because everyone knows my story. Anthony told everyone I had a threesome before our wedding. I'm even considering quitting my job because I just can't take the shame. I get that I did something terrible and he didn't want to marry me, but he should have just told me so. There was no reason for him to be this ruthless with me. He didn't have to wait till our wedding day so he could leave me standing at the altar. All he had to do was tell me secretly that it was over. There was no reason to dupe me and make me endure this public humiliation. But I guess that's what I get for being a cheater and gaslighter. Do you think I was wrong for preventing cheating in my marriage by cheating before marriage?